32nd chapter of Deuteronomy, and this is a song of Moses, verses 1 through 12. Give ear, O heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. Let my teaching drop as the rain, my speech distill as the dew, as raindrops on the tender herb, and as showers on the grass. For I proclaim the name of the Lord, ascribe greatness to our God. He is the rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are justice. A God of truth and without injustice, righteous and upright is he. They have corrupted themselves, they are not his children, because of their blemish, a perverse and crooked generation. Do you thus deal with the Lord, O foolish and unwise people? Is he not your father who bought you? Has he not made you and established you? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and he will show you, your elders, and they will tell you. When the Most High divided their inheritance to the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the place of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land and in the wasteland, a howling wilderness. He encircled him. He instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirs up its nest, hovers over its young, spreading out its wings, taking them up, carrying them on its wings. So the Lord alone led him, and there was no foreign God with him.
All right. We are in our second week of going pretty much what we call Through the Wilderness series. And we are looking at how Israel has journeyed through the wilderness and some things that we can learn from it. Now, remember last week we talked about what the wilderness is. And the wilderness is a place of desolation, of scarcity. It is a place of struggle. But in Scripture, it is a place where God's people actually can thrive, and you see stories of that. And so as we dive in, I just want to remind you of one important truth, which is that God will lead you into difficulty, lead you into the wilderness, but not every difficulty, every struggle, every loss you go through is a direct cause of what God has done. So there is a difference between going through the wilderness of God leading you into it and us just going through life at times and experiencing difficulty and loss. And so I want us to look at when God leads us into difficulty. This winter, my favorite season of the year, Charlie, when we had all the snow and the ice, our kids wanted to go outside instantly. And so the very first snow and ice that we had, Ezra and Lena get their clothes on fine. They go outside. And Charlie, we have to bundle him up a little bit extra because he's still a little bit small. And so we get him up and, he's walking like this because his clothes are so thick and everything. But he does not want to put on his mittens. And so Victoria and I fight with him to convince him to wear his mittens so that he can go outside and his hands not freeze. And so we go down the hill and sledding after we've fought with him for 10 or 15 minutes, finally convincing him that mittens are needed to go outside when it's freezing cold. And we go down the sled one hill, and his mittens come off. And I'm looking there, and I'm like, do I really want to fight with my child for another 10 to 15 minutes to get him to put his mittens back on? And so I go to put his mittens back on, and, Charlie, at this stage, the age of 3 is just the most difficult point that we've had so far. And he decides to not do any of that, to kick and scream a little bit. And I said, fine. You don't want to wear your mittens. You're going to learn. We'll learn today what happens. And so then we go up the hill, and he goes down one more time, and he says, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. His hands are freezing. And so me and him go back to the car while our kids continue to sled. And I share that because the next time that it snowed, when it did, and we went outside, guess who had learned his lesson about putting mittens on? Charlie. And we didn't have to wrestle him for 10 and 15 minutes to get him to put his mittens back on. And what I mean is that as we go through life, experience is often our best teacher. But what happens is that as we go through life, we are picking up and learning how the world operates. And we begin to see the world through a certain type of lens. All of our experiences, we filter through this. And then we change how we live, how we approach life, from the most basic of details to the most complicated of details. From learning that if it's cold outside, I got to put my mittens on if I'm going sledding so my hands don't freeze, to when I go through difficulty and struggle, I've got to make sure I'm doing A, B, and C. Anything and everything between, we have an order of operation, a way that we process information, we see the world, and then we choose to respond to it. The difficult part that comes into this, my question for you is, what if your order of operation and the way that you see the world is wrong? What if the way that you perceive how things are happening is actually the wrong way to perceive things? And that means that the data that you're putting into your system is inherently wrong, which means you're going to get the wrong output and the wrong response, and the wrong way to live life. You're going to make the wrong decisions time and time and time again, because the basis in your thought of how the world operates is wrong. And what I want you to see is that if that's the case, Ezra, are you paying attention? Because Ezra was freaking out that I brought half the Jenga set outside of our home here, and he was very curious about what was going to happen. What happens is that as we have the foundation for our life with our 3 Jenga pieces here, well, if everything is going well, then our tower stands, and it does well. But what if the way that you live life and the way you perceive life, what if maybe by chance that you start to build your Jenga pieces wrong? And then you're trying to go through and you make a response and a decision here, and you make another response and a decision here. My Jenga piece is already falling. What begins to happen as your tower becomes lopsided? It's eventually going to fall down. And what I want you to see is that the wilderness is just such a good revealer for where you are. In Exodus 19, God has freed his people out of Egypt, and they are on their way to the promised land, but he has this important stop for them. And they go to Mount Sinai, and Moses is told by God to make sure that they consecrate themselves, that they are to take a couple days to prepare themselves for meeting the Lord on Mount Sinai. And so the time comes and they've consecrated themselves and they're getting ready. And then God descends. And in Exodus 20, verses 18 to 21, this is their response when the people finally meet God. When the people saw the thunder and the lightning, and they heard the trumpet and they saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die." Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you and keep you from sinning." The people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. Now, this is a heartbreaking point in the story. In Exodus 19, God tells Moses that he wants his people to be a kingdom of priests, a representation of God to all of the other people around them, to each other, to the nations, that they were to be a lighthouse and missions that would reach the world for God. And yet, when it comes time to meet God, it is only Moses who actually approaches, even though the whole people were invited. And the reason being is that you're going to see that the fear of the Lord descended on the people, and they allowed that fear to keep them from it. And what's interesting is when we get to the fear of God, it's something that is throughout the Old Testament. And it goes into the New Testament. The fear of God is something where God descends in a special way and the people see reality for what it is. That they see a holy and a righteous God, and they realize that their life is off kilter, that the foundation for the way that they operate, the way they live, the way they perceive everything is off. And it is that realization that keeps that fear there. And what I want you to think about is in Genesis, when God creates everything, before sin enters the picture, the fear of God is not a thing. Because the world is perfect and operating as it should be. The fear of the Lord is only introduced and only brought up as a topic after sin. After we become corrupt and we become twisted. And it is because we go through life, and day by day as we sit there and we go through and we are interacting with people and we see, man, maybe money really is the answer, and that if I can get more money, then my life is going to be easier, it's going to be more secure. Or, man, when I'm going through and I'm seeing people above me in positions of authority and they're exercising and wielding their power and people are respecting them, maybe I should give my heart over to power. Or maybe I'm with my friends and my friends are not making great decisions and I'm spending time with them and I'm like, man, maybe God really doesn't know what He's talking about. And so what happens is that I start to slowly, I've got my degree, that I've got the fear of the Lord, that I'm operating, and I'm saying that, man, the way this world operates is not the way that I should be operating. I've got my eyes set on Christ, but day after I go in with meeting at work, or I'm going and spending time with friends, or I'm with family, or I'm seeing how the world operates around me, it starts to move me ever so slowly, 1 degree at a time, off from a fear of the Lord. And instead of living rooted and established and saying, man, this is how the world should operate, this is how God designed everything, I start to move off of that. And then the data that I'm putting in and I'm trying to operate my life on becomes inherently wrong. And I start to live my life not for God, not for a trust in His grace and His mercy and that He's going to sustain me. I start to operate and say, man, I've got to save my own life. I've got to be the savior of my day. Man, if I want to get ahead in life, then I've got to be about me and not other people. I've got to be willing to push down, cut throats to be able to get ahead in life. And so ever so slowly as we go through this life, we just start to move 1 degree at a time. Off and off and off the Lord. And so in Exodus 20, when God shows up, the people still have a lot of Egypt in them. And so when God shows up, the fear that they have is the realization they are living their life for the wrong things. The basis and understanding of how they should live has been completely wrong. And Moses sees it for what it is, and he says, do not let this keep you from God. This is meant to carry with you so that as we journey through the wasteland, as we journey through the desert, that it will keep you on the path that you need to be on. But the people fail. And what's amazing is not only do they refuse to step into this covenant with God where they are freaked out, but you'll see that as they journey through the wilderness that they don't get it ever together. That generation fails. In Exodus 16 and 17, before they get to Mount Sinai, it is where they have no water and they have no food. And instead of trusting God and going to the Lord, who they just watched bring the strongest nation to its knees, instead of going to Him and saying, God, would you provide, would you show up, they respond in complaining. They respond in frustration. Exodus 20 is the next story in their journey. That's where they go to Mount Sinai. It's where they encounter God. The very next scene after that, as we're looking, is going to be the golden calf. So they've got Mount Sinai. They're supposed to encounter God. And then the next story is when Moses goes up to receive the law of God, to tell them how to operate as a nation. They somehow get in their minds that we shouldn't worship this God that rescued us. We should go and worship a golden calf. The fear of the Lord doesn't stick with them. From there, in Numbers 11, they're tired of God's manna and the sweet provision that He has. And so they won't meet. They begin to complain. And instead of just asking God, they allow complaining to be the conversation starter for them. After that story, you get to Numbers 13 and 14, and Numbers 13 and 14 is where they go to the Promised Land. They're supposed to enter this. God's prepared the way for them, and they refuse to enter it. From there in Numbers 20, they are tested again with water, and again they fail. The Lord shows up, and they are supposed to change everything. The fear of the Lord is supposed to sit with them, not as this deterrent, not as this fear that's supposed to guide and overshadow their life, but it is a compass north that always points to how you should live. That is how the fear of God is communicated. And instead of allowing that to be something that moves and changes and completely impacts the way that they live, they just keep operating the way that is comfortable and normal to them. And the wilderness, which was meant to bring this stuff to the surface and God to scoop it out and say, look, get the Egypt out of you, get the way that you've been operating out of you, and let me follow me. Instead of allowing that to happen, they mess this opportunity up. And that generation fails to enter the Promised Land. That generation is sent to wander in the wilderness for 40 years until their kids get old enough that they try that again. And so when we approach Deuteronomy 32, we're actually at the very end of Moses' life. We're actually at the end of the wilderness journey. And as Moses is about to die, he shares with them these last words. He's looking to the children of the people that gave him such a difficult time, that have messed him up in so many different ways, that have made him probably gray and lose all of the hair that he's ever had because of how they've responded. And so he's saying, do not be like your mom and dad. The example that they set when you were a child, do not follow in their footsteps. So let me look at you. Deuteronomy 32, verses 3-4. It says, I will proclaim the name of the Lord. Oh, praise the greatness of our God. He is the rock. His works are perfect, and all of his ways are just. A faithful God who does no wrong. He is upright and just is he. Now, what I want you to see is that he is the rock and his works are perfect. Anyone that is perfect does not need to change, and the rock is a steadfast, timeless peace. And what he is telling them is that God does not change. God is not the one that changes. It becomes more difficult that as we go throughout life, what happens is that as I start to turn my life, and instead of facing north and I'm basing my decisions on faith and trusting who God's got me to be, then I move off of it 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degrees. And what happens is that as I go through difficulty and I'm facing this way, well, I think God's the one that's changed. Not me. God's the one that's been moved. And what he is doing is that he is reminding them, and he's saying, as you go into the Promised Land and you are going to face difficulty, it is God who is perfect. It is God who remains the same. It is God who is always going to be there. And so let me keep going to build the rest of my point out. Deuteronomy 32, 5-6. They are corrupt and not his children. To their shame, they are warped and a crooked generation. What I want you to circle, highlight is corrupt, and they are warped, and they are crooked. Verse 6, in this, the way that you repay the Lord, you foolish and unwise people, is he not your Father, your Creator, who made you and formed you? What Moses is telling the people is that as they are in the wilderness and they are in a point of just scarcity, as they are in a point of difficulty, as they are struggling, it is not God who has changed. It is they who have changed. So let me put it, when we go through difficulty and we are struggling and we want to respond in anger, we want to respond in frustration, we want to respond in doubt or complaining, it is not God who has changed, it is you, it is me who have changed. As I live my life and I start to take my life and move 1 degree at a time and I start to build on a different foundation, what happens is that the wilderness becomes a teacher and a revealer, and it shows that my foundation is corrupt. That my foundation, I am building my life on the wrong things. And what I do in that frustration is instead of looking at myself, man, I look at God and I say, man, you've been the one that's changed. You're the one that has left me. You're the one that led me into this mess. Instead of what the wilderness is doing is saying, hey, you have moved a couple of degrees off the Lord. Hey, you have taken one of your foundational pieces, and instead of trusting in God, you're trusting in money. Or hey, instead of trusting in God's faithfulness, you're trusting in yourself, and that if you can plan well enough, if you can plan further ahead, that your future is good. And all it's showing is that the foundation is wrong. The way you're operating and living your life, you're getting wrong data, wrong information. And so the system is putting out wrong information. You're responding in the wrong way. The wilderness shows you that it is God who is perfect, God who is faithful, God who is always with you. You are the one who has changed. And what the wilderness does is it is always an opportunity, always, for me to see who I really am at that point. As I am stressed, as I am struggling, the things that I hold dear will come to the surface. The things that I trust in and I've built my life on, they will come to the surface. They will show me what I really hold dear. And what God is trying to do in that moment of testing, when He comes down on Mount Sinai, in the moment of wilderness in your life, is He is trying to scoop that stuff out to allow you to face north again. For you to be restored in your faith, for you to see who God really is. And it is a reminder that God is not the one who changes, but we are. And boy, can I tell you that most of the time we do not change for the better. When we are drifting, when we are not being intentional, we drift away from the Lord, not towards Him. Let me keep going. Deuteronomy 32, verses 1 and 2. Listen, you heavens, and I will speak. Hear, you earth, the words of my mouth. Let my teaching fall like rain, and the words descend like dew, like showers on new grass, like abundant rain on tender plants. Moses, who has, in the Old Testament view, the greatest prophet, the greatest and the strongest, that all, when you get to Jesus today, they're all looking back to Moses. When Moses' final words, he's saying, let my teachings restore you. And what you find amazing is, what's he do? In his teachings, he doesn't say, hey, you've done this, this, and this wrong. He calls them crooked, you're warped, you've twisted, you've moved off of the point. But what he quickly turns to do is to show who God is and how He has been faithful. And so the wilderness becomes a teaching place and a reminder of who God is. That it is not Him who has changed, but it is you who have changed since the last time you've really encountered Him. It is you who have moved off of the Lord since your real last encounter with Him. Let me keep going. Deuteronomy 32, 8-12. Remember the days of old. Consider the generations long past. Ask your father, and he will tell you, your elders, and they will explain to you. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when He divided all of mankind, He set up boundaries for the people according to the number of the sons of Israel. For the Lord's portion is His people, Jacob His allotted inheritance. He is reminding them of who they are, that they are God's inheritance. In a desert land He found him, in a barren and hollow waste He shielded him and cared for him. He guarded him as the apple of His eye, like an eagle that stirs up its nest and hovers over its young, that spreads its wings to catch them and carries them aloft. The Lord alone led him. No foreign gods were with him. The wilderness is a revealer of what you truly care about. It will show you what the things that you hold dear, but it is also a teacher, if you allow it. The sad thing is that for that first generation that got rescued out of Egypt, that saw God bring the strongest nation to its knees, that saw God provide for them time and time and time again, they never allowed the wilderness and seeing God to change their heart. And it is the same point that I made last week. The wilderness is an opportunity, but you can miss it. Meaning that you can go through difficulty, you can go through struggle, you can go through scarcity, and you completely miss the point of why you are going through it. You can waste what God has set before you. It is a scary thought. because I do not want to allow my difficulty and my struggle to go to waste. But it is a good reminder, because there's only certain things in my heart and your life that can be revealed by going through difficulty. And the idols that we place in our life, the things that we bow down and worship, the things that we really don't want to admit to anybody else, those only come to light when you are at the end of your rope and you are reaching out for anything and everything. And so when you go through difficulty, when God's led you into the wilderness, what you need to be looking for, and the thing you need to be evaluating, is where are you overreacting? Where are you overly angry? Where are you overly frustrated? Where are you overly breaking down? What are you overly turning to? What is filling your thoughts on the ways to fix the problem? Because I guarantee that if you sit back and you sit with that for a moment, it will start to show you your idols. It'll start to show you that how you have moved 1 degree off the Lord, 2 degrees off the Lord, 3 degrees off the Lord. It is in the moments when we are struggling and we feel like our rope is about to snap that we will see the things that we really care about, the things that we really guide our life by. And so if we're going to go through the wilderness and make the most of our opportunities, we have to know that, like Charlie, when you have experiences, it is the greatest of teachers. An example of this is that I can tell you that God loves you all I want. And you can think that that is true. But it is not until something really happens in your life that you turn a truth that is up here into a belief that happens in here. It is not until I really go through something, or I see God's faithfulness, or I see that He is way better to me than I deserve, that I start to truly believe that the Lord loves me. It is experiences that uningrained, that pull out, that surface the things that are truly in our life, the wrong things, but it is also experiences that ingrain good things. And so we need experiences. We need to go through things for the truth that we know up here to become a truth that we live by. The people of God knew who God was. They witnessed it. But for them, sadly, it only stayed up here. Never became a guiding light. It never became something that they guided their life by, something they changed their life to. It never worked its way into here because they wasted the wilderness. And so as we leave, promise we're going to get into nuts and bolts in the coming weeks. But last week, the wilderness is an opportunity. And this week, that opportunity is that it shows the idols in our own life, the things that we live our life by, our compass. And we can either allow those things and say, God, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm upset, but I realize that I'm trusting in the wrong things. Please work within me. Please pull these things out so that I can trust you and live my life like I'm supposed to, so that I can have peace, so that I can actually thrive in the desert land, knowing that it is you who provides, not me. Knowing that it is you who is going to provide my every need, not money. It is you who is going to provide my future, not my planning, not my power, not my 401k. It is God and only God. And so we hate the wilderness because no one likes to be uncomfortable, no one likes to struggle, no one likes pain. But it is only struggle, difficulty, and pain that show what you really hold on to. And allow the ingraining of good things to come into your heart. And so as we wrap up, if you are going through difficulty and struggle, the question you need to be asking is, what are you overreacting to? Where are you overly upset? And you see that I'm using the word overly. You can be upset. You can struggle. But if I'm overly upset, if I'm overly struggling, it's probably pointing to somewhere in your life that you've taken a 2, 3, 4 degree steps off of the Lord. It's probably revealing that maybe one of the foundational pieces of your life is set on the wrong side. And then that is where you say, God, would you please work? It's not going to be your planning. It's not going to be your ability to fix this. It's only going to be the Lord. So allow the Lord to work and say, God, would you please fix this for me? There we go. All right, let me pray for us. Jesus, as we come before you, Lord, I recognize that there are many in this room that are struggling, that are going through difficulty, and that life is painful for them. God, I pray that you would give them great comfort, that they would feel your presence and they would know that you are with them. But God, as they are struggling, as they are walking through difficulty, Lord, may they also see that there's some things that they may need to work on, some things that they may need to give to you, some ways to reorganize their life, to allow the fear of you, the reality of who you are, to reorient them to what is true north. God, for all of us in this room, we take those one degree steps. We move off of you so easily. God, I thank you for your faithfulness to us and that you are far kinder to us than we deserve. Lord, may we constantly pursue you, constantly encounter you, and reorchestrate our life to allow you to be true north for us. God, convict us, draw us to you, and give us the strength and faith to trust you in this process. And we ask these things in your name. Amen.